Let's go make this precious tufted pillow. But first, always remember to share this so it will save to your profile and you can find it when you're looking for it again later. We're going to use this pattern called All Buttoned Up Charm Pillow. And Missouri Star is giving you a free download of this pattern. The download for the pattern is linked in the caption. Also, the Sugarberry collection of fabrics that I used for my pillow is also linked in the caption. Now the pattern tells me that it is for 5-inch pieces. So I knew I needed 5-inch by 5-inch pieces. One charm pack will make what we're going to make today. Let's go make it. I'm just like y'all. The hardest part of any project for me is choosing the fabrics. Now, it's also one of the most fun parts, but it's definitely not easy. And our pattern says that we need 36 5-inch by 5-inch squares. And it needs to be 6 across and 6 down. So this is what I've decided I want mine to look like. So now what I'm going to do is pick up each row. I'm going to take the first one and lay it on top, face down, of the second one, and then I'm just going to pick them up like this. And when I get down here, I'm going to put a clip on this side, and I'll tell you about that in just a second. And here's the second row. And if you don't have any clips, get you some, because I'm not a pinner, but I will use a clip in a heartbeat because they're easy, super easy. Missouri Star sent me this pattern and said, can you make this with your followers? I said, absolutely. It's so cute. So we had 6 5-inch squares across and 6 5-inch squares down. Our instructions say to sew 6 squares by 6 squares into one big patchwork piece. That's the first thing we're going to do. Arrange 36 5-inch print squares into 6 rows of 6 as shown. The middle 4 squares will be the center of one side of the pillow, and the 4 corner squares will make up the center of the other side. Sew the squares into 6 rows using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Press the rows in opposite directions, nest the seams, and sew the rows together to make a 27.5-inch pieced square. So what all that means is sew all of this together. You saw me pick them up and put the clip on the top, right? That clip just tells me that's my first piece in the row. So when I pick these 2 up and line them up and sew them pretty side to pretty side, when I open it up, I know that my next piece goes here, because this is my first piece. So I'm going to leave this clip on here until I'm completely done. And when I lay it back out, I will know that this is the top of it. Now, if you want to number your rows, you can with a scratch piece of paper or whatever you've got. I picked all mine up and then I piled them. So number 6 is on the bottom. And then number 5, 4, 3, 2, and this is row number 1. But however you keep them straight. If you're not confident or comfortable with anything I just said, just sew them 2 at a time. Pick up 2, sew it, lay it down. Pick up 2, sew it, lay it down. Pick up 2, sew it, lay it down. Whatever you've got to do, okay? I'm going to line my 2 pieces up. I'm going to sew them with a 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to get the 1/4 inch seam by following the edge of my presser foot with the edge of my fabric. I'm going to back stitch when I start and when I stop, because my grandma said so. I'm going to sew all of these into rows, and then we're going to iron them. I cannot tell y'all how many years I sewed by picking up 2 pieces and putting it back down. Because if I told y'all all of the years that I made messes out of stuff trying to pile it up and sew it because I thought I knew what I was doing and I didn't. So if you have to pick up 2 at a time, it's perfectly fine. I promise it's fine. All of us have done it. And if anybody tells you they haven't, they're telling you a story, or maybe they're just better than me. But I did it for years and years and years until I finally figured out a system that worked for me, and this one works for me. But if you have a different system, I'm into that too. So much of my sewing style has come from trial and error, from doing something and figuring out that didn't work, using my seam ripper and trying again. And while we're talking about a seam ripper, let's talk about her. So my seam ripper's name is Sally. I know lots of y'all name your seam rippers and all the rest of your tools too. But let's talk about Sally. So she comes out at not the best time, right? We always hate to see her come. But then you think about how amazing is that seam ripper, that she can take something, and in my life she's a girl, and make it like it never happened. completely do away with whatever mistake that you have made. And you get to start over and make it better the second time. How amazing would it be if we had a seam ripper for life? You know, when you've said something you wish you wouldn't have, when you've disappointed somebody that you love, when you haven't shown up in the way that you needed to, and you could have a complete do-over. She's kind of magical. I compare her to a doctor when I teach little kids. So her name's actually Dr. Sally, because we don't love to go to the doctor. It's not our best life. When we go to the doctor, we don't feel good. We don't want to be there, but we go to the doctor so he can fix us. And that's what Dr. Sally does. She fixes whatever's wrong. Okay, we've sewn all 6 of them. Now, we're going to iron them. Our pattern says to iron our seams in opposite directions so we can nest them, but we're not doing that. You can if you want to. I'm not telling you not to. I'm just telling you that I'm not going to. I'm not going to worry about nesting my seams. And nesting your seams simply means when you sew it together that this seam goes in the opposite direction of this seam. You see that? That's how you nest your seams, but I'm not doing that. I'm just going to iron mine and then sew them together. And I want you to do it however you want to. If you want to nest your seams, I want you to. If you don't want to, I don't want you to. I do want you to iron it, although I've done plenty without ironing. Now, as I iron them, I'm going to pile them back up in the same order so that I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel whenever I start to lay my pieces out. But you could lay your pieces out, take a picture of them, sew them together, and then pull your picture out so you know where your rows go. Otherwise, it's like a whole puzzle. Now, this uses 5 by 5 inch squares, and 42 5 by 5 inch squares come in a pack. So this pattern used 36 squares. So one pack would make this pillow, and then you would have a few left over to make some of the cute Christmas ornaments or any of the small projects, or put in your stash, or add some of your stash to it to make a patchwork project. Anyway, there's plenty in one pack for this pillow, and you'll have a couple of extra. Now we've ironed them. We're going to lay them back out. And remember, we put our clip at the top so we would know it was at the top. Make sure that this is what you want it to look like, and it is. Now I'm going to pick up one row and lay it pretty side to pretty side, and I'm going to sew down this side. Straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam, back stitching when I start and when I stop. I am going to make sure that my seams match. I'm not nesting my seams, but I do want to make sure they match. And I don't care what you have to do. Pinch it, pleat it, pull it, just get it there. Because if it's off right here, then it's going to just get worse and worse and worse until you're missing half of your pillow when you get to the bottom. So make sure your seams match. 1/4 inch seam, back stitching when you start and when you stop, because my grandma said so. I'm getting the 1/4 inch seam by following the edge of my fabric with the edge of my presser foot. Now, y'all tell me that all presser feet aren't a 1/4 inch. All of my standard presser feet are, but you may want to measure yours to be sure. If yours isn't a 1/4 inch seam, you can make a mark with a piece of tape. They make these magnetic seam guides. You can use the ruler that's on your needle plate, a Sharpie on your sewing machine, whatever you have to do. Just make sure that your seam allowance is the same. And the best piece of advice I have ever received sewing was the day my grandmother told me to stop looking at the needle, to follow my fabric and my chosen seam guide, and that would make my seam straight. Otherwise, my seam was all over the place. And I'm already excited to see the pillows that y'all make. So be sure to email a photo to hometownquiltcompany@gmail.com for show and tell. We all want to see. Here's the first part of our pillow. Y'all, I love these colors. We're going to iron it. I'm going to take my clips off now because it doesn't matter. I'm through with them. This is my ironing situation. Heat resistant pad, wool mat, sheet iron. Everything's from Walmart. Everything's linked in my Walmart storefront. That's linked in the caption if you're looking for it. I have this heat resistant pad underneath my wool mat because I'm afraid the heat will go through my wool mat and burn my table. If you don't have an ironing situation, you should, because if your iron is handy, you'll be much more likely to iron your projects. And ironing them really does just make them look nicer. You go iron yours while I finish ironing mine. Don't we all wish that ironing happened just this fast? You've ironed yours, I've ironed mine. Let's see what our instructions say to do next. Fold the pieced square in half, right sides together, stitch the short ends closed. Back stitching at the beginning and the end. Okay, so it's telling us to take this and put it pretty side to pretty side and sew right here. straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam, back stitching when you start and when you stop, and make sure your seams line up. Make sure your seams match as you go so that your pillow will be, I was gonna say square, but so that it will be a rectangle when you're finished. The hardest part about making anything is the very first one you make because you don't really understand what you're doing. And that's currently what's happening in my brain. So I'm just following the instructions and we'll see. Okay, now it told us to sew our pieces together, fold it in half, stitch it on both ends. We've done that. Bring together the 2 side seams you just stitched. Poke out the corners, match the seams, and stitch the opening together, beginning at the outside ends and sew towards the center. We have kind of an envelope situation. We're just gonna take these 2 side seams, we're gonna touch them together, just like this. Now I'm gonna get a clip and clip mine so that we can look and see what we do next. Okay, after you touch your side seams together, pull your sides all the way out. So see, it has this triangle right here, and it's stitching from the top down, from the top down and from the bottom up, leaving a hole right there. I'm gonna leave my hole about 3 inches. I'm gonna put a mark here and a mark here. And I'm gonna sew from here to this mark and stop, and then from here to the end and stop. You can pin it, clip it if you want to. I'm not going to, but I'm not telling you not to. I'm just telling you that I'm not going to. If you want to, I want you to. We're gonna sew it the same way. Straight stitch, 1/4 inch seam, back stitching when you start and when you stop, because my grandma said so. This is the first pillow I've ever made like this, and I have to tell y'all, it's kind of genius, but I was so confused, and I just kept telling myself, Tammy, trust the process. It will come together. And it did. Okay, we've sewn it. And now, if you pull your corners out, look what you have. Is that not so cute? So take your clip off and your fingers, turn it right side out. Push your corners out, fingers, chopstick, handy dandy tool. Do not use your scissors, because if you do, you'll poke a hole in your project and you'll be crying because you have a hole, and I'll be crying because you didn't listen to me, and then everybody's crying. Let's just don't do that. It's a terrible idea. All right, now we have our corners poked out and we have this really cute pillow. So I'm going to stuff mine with polyfill. Okay, I have an old pillow here that my children have beat to high heaven, and I am going to pull the stuffing out of it, fluff it back up, and reuse it. But you can use polyfill, you can use stuffing from an old pillow like I'm doing, or you can leave your hole big enough to put a pillow form in. But I don't have a 19-inch pillow form. That's what size this pillow is. And even if I did, I would not leave a hole big enough to cram a pillow form in, because I don't want to hand sew that closed. I do not love to hand sew. Some of my students would rather hand sew than machine sew any day of the week, not me. I'm all in till you say hand sewing. So make sure you stuff your pillow really well. And the smaller the pieces you put in there, the better off you'll be. Okay, so I have these buttons. I know they're all bright and shiny, but it's something I was doing or am doing for my little ladies, and so I love these. I think I like this larger one better. Look how cute that is. Or is it too gaudy? What do y'all think? Okay, I heard y'all yelling at me. This is not the pillow for the gaudy button. So we've got these brown buttons that I think are going to be more appropriate for this fabric. Although, just so you know, I do love something gaudy occasionally. Maybe a little more than occasionally, actually. You hand sew your hole closed. I'm going to hand sew my hole closed, and then we'll put our button on. But don't ask me to show you how to hand sew, because mine is not pretty, because I don't like it. Our pattern called for a covered button, but I didn't have a button to cover, so I'm just using a regular button that I already had. Now, I do recommend that you use a larger button. I'm actually using 2 buttons because my pillow is 2-sided. And if I put a button on each side, I'll have this pretty tufted look. That ringing that you hear in the background, that's the big baby coming in the back door. And if you don't know, I have a 23-year-old son, and he works for me full time. Okay, I've stitched the back of my pillow up. Now, I'm going to take my needle, and I have some thread. So my thread was 1 piece. I fed it through, and I came to the bottom, and I tied a knot. And then I tied a second knot. And currently, I'm just tying a third one to show you. Around my finger and through. just so there's a knot at the bottom of your thread. Now, I'm going to put my needle through my button and back through my button, okay? And then I'm gonna come down here where I tied this knot, and I'm gonna feed my needle through my thread. I'm gonna open my thread up and feed my needle between my two pieces of thread. And then when I pull it, the button stays on and the knot is on the back of the button, okay? So now, which button do we want on the front? Because this is gonna be the front of our pillow. We want this button on the front. So we're gonna take our needle and put it in the center of where all of these seams meet. And then we're gonna push it out in the back in the center where all of the seams meet. And we're gonna take our second button and we're gonna do the same thing. Through the button, back through the button, and then we're just gonna go through our pillow and back and forth from button to button. And as I sew these two buttons together, it's gonna give me a pretty tufted look on my pillow. Do you see that? So let's sew our buttons on and then we'll look at our pillow. Oh my goodness, and here's our two-sided tufted Christmas pillow. Y'all, this is precious. I hope you love it as much as I do. My name is Tammy. I'm your favorite sewing teacher, and I would love for you to come sew with me.